Hello and welcome to this episode of the REBT Advocates with Dr. Michael R. Adelstein of 3minutetherapy.com. You can find this book, 3-Minute Therapy, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life at therebt.life. And me, Tommy Bateman, counselor in Virginia. You can write us both at rebtadvocates@gmail.com. So today we wanted to take on something controversial again, like we like to do. And we're going to talk about the Serenity Prayer. Michael, what's the Serenity Prayer?
Okay, the Serenity, and Tommy, it's great to have you back. The Serenity Prayer is credited most commonly to Reinhold Niebuhr, and he was a philosopher, theologian, and apparently he wrote it in either the late 1930s or the early 1940s, but I think Alcoholics Anonymous adopted it in 1941. And they changed it a little, but their version is the most popular version, so that's the one we'll be using. And the Serenity Prayer says, God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So overall, I think the message is okay, but we're going to drill down a little and try to refine it and make it the REBT acceptance prayer. Did you want to comment on it in general, your general impression of it?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, I believe there's a God. I believe He can grant us serenity and wisdom and courage and all those things and strength that the Serenity Prayer elicits. But I kind of am concerned about how it's used, especially in AA. So I'm interested in what you'll have to say about this, and I'll sprinkle things in like I like to do. Okay.
And so I have a somewhat different view than you do, Tommy, about the God part. I'm not a theist myself, but you can believe in God and still recognize that it's your own hard work, practice, reinforcement that helps you get serenity or acceptance. And if you wait for it to happen to you, it's normally not going to happen. And this is one thing that REBT emphasizes, the importance of practice to change your thinking, to get from level one, a superficial recognition of the reality, and level two, a deep conviction. So work hard at that. REBT is rational emotive behavior therapy. It was devised by Albert Ellis, and Albert Ellis has taught me and probably Tommy many cognitive and behavioral strategies you can use to go from anxiety, depression, anger, procrastination, to serenity. So that was my first take on it. Before I go on, Tommy, did you have any further thoughts about that?
Yeah, I don't think we're very far apart here. So while as a Christian, I do believe God can and may grant us all those things that the Serenity Prayer talks about, even so, it is still doesn't relieve us of the responsibility to work on ourselves, improve ourselves, and so on and so forth. So I think we're going to, again, this is about my concern about how it's used, not necessarily the contents themselves. So let's go for it, Michael.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to mention is that it says, God grant us the serenity. And to me, being serene normally means you're peaceful, no troubles in the world, everything's okay. That's serenity. But REBT recognizes that life consists of hassles. Albert Ellis has famously said, life consists of one hassle after another. It always has, and it always will, and there's no reason why it should not. That's the reality. So I think that it's important to recognize there are hassles, frustrations, disappointments in life. So you're not going to feel serene and untroubled, maybe some of the time, but certainly not all the time if you want to have some motivation and incentive to change things. So we call it acceptance. So I would say the first step is not to get serenity, but to get acceptance, acceptance of the reality, recognizing that life isn't a bowl of cherries, that there's hard work to be done, but you accept that and you work toward your goals.
Yeah, in fact, the verbiage may be exactly backwards there. I mean, you don't, it's kind of phrased, I need the serenity in order to have acceptance. I think that's the opposite. It's opposite direction. So accept the things you cannot change. So we do the acceptance, the radical acceptance, to use a DBT term, or unconditional life acceptance, which is the REBT term, which will then lead to more serene emotions, for lack of a better way of putting it. So let's
Yeah.
flip that around, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good point. That once you accept hassles, then you'll be able to be less troubled, less upset, less disturbed, and closer to serenity, and maybe serene sometimes.
Mhm.
So that's certainly a wonderful feeling to work toward. Then the final part that I was going to comment on was the last phrase, the courage to change the things we can. Now, again, courage to change the things we can really doesn't come from the blue. Knowing what you can change and what you cannot change is often not so easy to determine. So so how do you find out what you can change and what you can't change? Well, you take a guess, and if you guess that trying to get a particular goal is out of reach, then you may want to move on to another goal. But another way to determine it, rather than just to guess, is to take risks, experiment. If you have a goal, you can experiment for it. For example, if your goal is to work for peace, you're probably not going to get peace in the world tomorrow, but it's not necessarily all or none. So you could break your goals down into smaller steps, and maybe some of the things that you can't change, you would break down and just work on the smaller steps, nibble it away. Tommy, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, perhaps when it comes to changing things, and of course, as Michael said, and of course the end of the prayer kind of acknowledges, it's hard for us to know whether or not we can change something or not. So what may be a better approach? I think the REBT approach would be, hey, let's try to work on our frustration tolerance to weather the failures and the successes that we have, especially particularly the failures. So give us the frustration tolerance, the high frustration tolerance to accept the things that we fail on, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Okay, very good. I didn't have any further comments, but just overall, I would say that the REBT message is set goals, set objectives, and develop passion to achieve those goals by working hard at it. Refuse to give up if you achieve your goals, and enjoy life those ways.
And if you need tips on how to do so, hey, follow this channel, subscribe, hit like, get us out there, guys, because we really have a lot of good tips in order to raise that frustration tolerance and give yourself the strength in order to practice good thinking. Michael, any last thoughts?
Yeah, we have about 92 now, I think, through these YouTube discussions.
Mhm.
So you can look back on some of the earlier ones where we discuss a lot of things related to REBT, rational motive therapy, and you can read books. I have a book, 3-Minute Therapy, and Albert Ellis has over 80 books. So there's lots to read. And in addition to our videos, you can see Albert Ellis's videos on YouTube. And I think those are active. Well, thank you for watching. Give us a like, subscribe on Patreon, and to stay on the rational side of life. study REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. Thank you.